Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spincast. Today, we're going to be talking more on the professional side of esports rather than collegiate or high school esports with one of our guests, Sternab. He is from the United Kingdom and coaches currently a Challenger League team in EU Siege. So, without further ado, go ahead, introduce yourself, Sternab, and tell us a little bit about your background, kind of how your path took you from casting into being a league owner in CCS, and a coach of Diffuse Kids in European Challenger League.
So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm Sternab. I'm from the United Kingdom. I've been playing Siege since it was in alpha, so good 5 years now since that started. In fact, actually, it was around May 1st in 2015 when the alpha came out. So yeah, a long time ago. And yeah, I started out. I used to manage a community called Team SF, where it was kind of like a military kind of thing, and we would just like have fun, like group up. It was like 200 people just got together, and I did that for a while. I started playing Comp Siege around then as well with the same group of guys. Moving on from that, I decided to get into casting. Casted a few smaller tournaments like ESA. Moved on from there, did CCS, did OGA, and some Go Falls and stuff. And then I just continued to go with that. Recently, I took a break from casting. Or I consider it to be a break. Maybe it won't be. Maybe it will be.
Yeah.
I took a break from casting, and I decided to coach what is now known as Vexed in ESL Premiership. I casted them during the previous season, the last season of the ESL Premiership, and it was a lot of fun. We finished second place in that season, just narrowly losing out to Crazy in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm coaching Diffuse Kids in Challenger League for Europe, where we finished fourth place.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely a great background with a very quickly developing scene in Siege as they're on that brink of that tier 2/tier 1 esport,
Mm-hmm.
depending on who you ask and what time of the year, whether it's right after SI or kind of in this dead zone where there's really not much esports going on from that professional
Sure.
sense in production. So, kind of my first question for you is obviously you're an owner of CCS and you're a coach of a top tier team in EU Siege, which is considered the most competitive region for Siege. Kind of how do you balance that? Where do you focus your priorities and engage different perspectives or approaches with those two facets of what you're involved in?
So right now there's a lot of just preparation stage for CCS, and thankfully we have Rob, or the Third Walker as he's known on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
He handles a lot of the operations and a lot of how the league is actually going to be ran. We meet the partners, me, Ty Tangles, and the Third Walker. We meet once a week and we just talk about what is our plans for CCS, and then other things that we're doing on the side as well. What kind of progress are we making? Where do we see ourselves? And then we get together and we do things as well, like the Viking Gaming League. We help produce that as a good way of our just keeping our producers and our talent in the vibe while we're still planning the season itself. And then we also have a Down But Not Out charity event was coming up next week, which has some big teams in it as well. Also just a good opportunity as well to keep our production on talent, but also a good way to help out.
Yeah, for sure. I know there's a bunch of charity esports, and I always love to see them because right now a lot of charities need that very
Mm-hmm.
giving nature with the world situation with COVID and all that kind of stuff. I know SSG is participating in that, so that's obviously the reigning world champions
Yep,
is
they
obviously
are.
a little plus there for sure. So yeah, moving on to your coaching job. So
Mm-hmm.
you kind of talked about the logistics that goes into developing the leagues at CCS. So talk about the approach you take into coaching at that top tier level with Diffuse Kids currently, and kind of how you approach, dealing with your team and making sure that they're, enabling them to develop that positive growth every day as they, seek pro league.
So while we did finish fourth in Challenger League last season, we were pretty much one round away from securing Pro League, which
Mm-hmm.
was pretty devastating to a lot of the guys. And obviously, we were incredibly close to achieving that goal that everyone had set their minds to for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out obviously, and it kind of proved to us that we didn't work hard enough for it. So rather than beating ourselves over it, we said, we'll take a bit of a break. We came back to it with a fresh new mindset, and now we're looking for an analyst as well to help kind of bolster our analyst work and our prep work, and working a lot more on strategy. So mainly the whole process, and I think a lot of teams will agree on this, is the general process is that you start off with an idea of what you want to do. You look at other teams and look what they're doing. You kind of establish a map pool of what maps potentially going to be playing against your opponents, and what maps are you strongest at, and therefore, what maps are they going to end up banning out.
Mm-hmm.
So, what map do you have in common? What map are they going to try and take you to? Once we've established that, we'll come up with a bunch of strategies and how we want to play the map out. What operator bans do we want to do? And a lot of it is just kind of theory crafting.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, this is mostly just me and then maybe one or two guys from the team, mainly the IGL, which is currently Avish. He's doing a lot of our in-game leader work. We work out a plan. We go into dry runs and we talk to the team about it. Like maybe they'll point out some things that don't work, and then after we're pretty happy with the strategies that we want to run, we'll come up with maybe a couple of setups for each site, and then we go into what is known as a structured scrim with another team. Normally try and find scrims against very high level national teams or Challenger League and Pro League teams. That way you're getting the most efficient practice out of it. What I mean by a structured scrim, so normally in Siege, in comp, you play and it's first to 7 rounds win with a swap at 6-6. In a structured scrim, you play both sides. You do 6 attacks and 6 defenses, regardless of what the score is. So it allows you, if you're on defense, let's say, all of your defenses fail and you get 6-0'd, and then you can only run a couple of attacks then, and it's not very, that's not very good for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very good practice for either team. In this scenario, even if everything fails or everything succeeds, you can still, both teams can still plan out everything that they're going to do. So it allows us to do 2 setups per site on the 3 sites that we maybe want to play, or maybe we want to throw a 4th site in there or something like that, depending on the map. And allows us to just run everything. And most teams in Europe and, most teams in North America now as well, will run that structured scrim setup. And I think that's very important for you to have accurate data. So then, we do the scrim. We take data from that. We look at, okay, where did this go wrong? Where did this go right? What is working? What's not? We work on it a little bit. We go back to drawing rooms. We go back to the drawing board. Maybe if it's something completely doesn't work, we rework it. We scrim again. We rework it. We scrim again.
Mm-hmm.
We keep doing that for about a week, and then once we're happy with things, we'll move it and we'll use it in a match.
Yeah, that kind of goes to show the audience and the listeners right now the in-depth nature of that pre-game routine, right? This isn't just, well, we'll sit back and think of a few strats and throw it together. No, it's dedicated effort, and then go back to the drawing board, fix what's wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at utility usage, look at, are these positions right, are entry points right, are executions really timed correctly,
Mm-hmm.
is the flanks coming up at the right time, all that stuff. There's so much that goes into it. And
Yep.
there's a couple points in there that I wanted to touch on just a little more in depth. First of all, the support staff. So you talked about picking up an analyst and all this data that you gather in these structured scrims where you're going 12 rounds, which if the viewers don't know, take probably about an hour for that scrim. And then you got to analyze it, take all those stats, and then really understand where are these stats coming from. What can we do to either improve the stats that we need to be successful and ultimately get that round win. So talk about the importance of the support staff and kind of their role in enabling the team to be able to play and apply those strats while still being able to develop them to that next level and enable that kind of positive growth I was talking about earlier.
So generally, yeah, we are looking for analysts because the data load is pretty heavily on me, and I want to concentrate more on the strategy side rather than the data entry side. Also, the thing I didn't mention there as well is we also have a team psychologist as well, Cedric, who meets with us at least once a month, but sometimes it's more often than that.
Mm-hmm.
And every player and then the whole team will meet with him. And he's been a lot of help as well, just kind of helping the team mentally, kind of approaching it from that perspective as well. It's very important. The players' mentality health as well. Like you got to know they're in a good mood to go into the matchup. If they go into the matchup thinking they're going to lose, or they're having a bad day, or they get too obsessed with results and things like that, then it's really going to affect their mental performance, and they're not going to perform very well at all. So the mental coaching is a good part of it, and also I personally will look over all of their VODs during the scrim as well. They'll all stream it live to me, and then I can see their perspectives. I can see what they're doing wrong, and from that, maybe I'll have a few things to say. I'll go back and I'll clip stuff from that, and I'll say, you didn't hold this right, or maybe you want to talk about this, or sometimes I'm not always right in my analysis, but it's good to talk to the players, and I kind of just get a feel for how they're playing the game and what exactly their decision-making processes. So it's good to understand the players. But yeah, stats-wise, we're looking mainly at operator lineup. Like, do we need to change anything here? Who's getting first picked? Are we trading kills out properly? It's way better to just track a bunch of data and see objectively what is working, what is not
Mhm.
working, rather than players just kind of going, oh, I felt this worked really well, or something like that.
Mhm.
Like something like, oh, there you're winning a bunch of rounds, right? But you're winning it in a weird way, something that wouldn't actually work in a real game, or
Mhm.
maybe you're winning it in a very desperate like 1v3 clutch scenario. Like clutches is great and all, and it proves that you have good players, but you can't rely on that. That doesn't mean you win the round, though. I like
Yep.
to say like you have rounds that you can win strategically, and you can have rounds that you can win just by blind luck or by just gun skill alone. I
Mhm.
say that most of the time every gunfight is 50-50, so you can't rely on that. You've got to make sure you are winning rounds strategically because that is very reliable. And the same goes the other way as well, that you can lose rounds non-strategically as well, like you just messed up or you weren't droning properly or something like that. So there's a bunch of stats that and I won't go into detail on exactly what we are tracking for that, because I think then I just give away my entire playbook. But
For sure.
we track a lot of stuff just to make sure we're doing the right things.
Mhm. Yeah, that definitely kind of shows that, people kind of look at esports like, oh, do they even need a coach? Do they need one coach, maybe two? But I always, show that analogy of like, look at, soccer or football, in America or Europe, obviously one's more popular than the other in both.
Hmm.
That coaching staff, they probably have 10, 15, 20 coaches, position coaches, trainers, people doing the stats, analyzing the stats, and then coming
Yeah.
up with all their strategies behind the books. With formations or plays or etc. depending on what sport. And it's the exact same thing in esports. For sure, you have to have that level of dedication and energy and time and effort to be able to put into that so you can win ultimately.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, definitely another point, kind of going off that team psychologist and having that right mindset. I know you guys had just had a heartbreak a few weeks ago and being,
Hmm.
one round away from the most elite league on the planet for Siege. But we talked a little bit before the show about that mindset, right? And going back to the table, taking a little bit of break, making sure everyone's going back to their positive mindset, and then approaching
Yeah.
the next season with those goals like, okay, we're going to make it this time. We know why we messed up. We got to put a little more effort in here, focus maybe more on a strategy for this map, or outside like team psychology, that kind of fantastic stuff. So speak to the importance of a keeping with your team, right, in esports, kind of going against that
Yeah.
typical disbandment kind of philosophy. So it speaks to a little bit of that, how you guys approach that, and how that is important moving forward as esports continues to grow.
So I'd say generally you want to avoid roster moves a ton, just because
Hmm.
the inevitable drama that will come along with that as well. But not just that, but also if you drop a player because you think he isn't performing well, you better have a really good reason to believe that, because it's going to be a ton easier just to improve that player's performance and work on him
Hmm.
personally, rather than just drop him and pick up someone else, because that someone else is going to have to learn the synergy again. They're going to have to learn all the strats, the call outs. That there's a whole process that's going to have to go through, and you're not going to have long to actually do that. And you might have more efficient practice by doing something else instead. Obviously, sometimes there are scenarios where you can't avoid it, where a player just isn't about the grind, or they're not motivated anymore, and there's nothing you can do to change that, and they leave of their own accord, or you have to drop them.
Hmm.
Things like that are tough decisions, but those are the kind of decisions you have to make if you want to, go forward in esports. You have to surround yourself with the same people with the same mentality as you, with the same willingness to grind and the same willingness to actually get there in the end, and the same passion for the game itself. Because
Hmm.
if you don't love what you're doing in the first place, then there's no point in even doing it anyway. So, I,
Yeah.
I always say, like, do it because you love it, not because you're about the grind, because otherwise it's pointless.
Exactly. That's kind of where we're starting our path here with Stay Plugged In is like find that passion in esports and then apply it, right? Find that love
Hmm.
and passion. And that's the work ethic and the time and the effort put in is comes from that passion and love. If you don't have that
Exactly.
passion and love, you're gonna be like, do I really want to play today? I kind of want to just go hang out or watch some Netflix or something. But if you have that passion and love, you're like, okay, when can I get better? You're gonna be telling your teammates, hey, let's get on, let's go over this strat, let's review the VOD from last night, let's get into some scrims, all that kind of good stuff. So kind of another side point to that team mentality. My next question would be, how much do you focus on outside of the game just as much as inside of the game? So, talking about strat development, analytics, we touched on those a little bit, but also like team psychology and team synergy and making sure the teammates are, not being toxic to each other is probably a good place to start. But also making sure that, they're having that well balanced life so they don't feel like that grind is
Yeah.
the only thing you're doing. So, kind of as a coach, how do you address that and making sure that outside of the game, they're just as much prepared as they are in the game when they
Well,
go to compete?
so outside of practice and stuff like that, and outside of the scrims and the games themselves, the guys are always playing ranked and stuff like that with each other. They're playing other games like I think Next One and Avish were playing Valorant yesterday with each other,
Mm-hmm.
which that's good. It helps them bond together. It helps them communicate. They're still playing a comp game.
Mm-hmm.
They're still somewhat practicing because they're taking it seriously and they want to win. Obviously, they're competitive guys. So just making sure that the guys are interacting with each other outside of practice means that they are friends and they do want to play together. It's not just business. It is a relationship in a way. So doing stuff like that is important as well. And the sports psychologist does help with some of that as well. Like if you have a problem with your teammate, just say it with your chest. Don't hide
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yep.
Don't come to me crying about it or whispering or Chinese whispers or anything like that. Just face it.
Yeah.
And you'll often find that people are very reasonable when you do stuff like that. The
Mm-hmm.
drama, I've seen a lot of teams, especially kind of like tier 3, tier 4 level, who they start drama between teams or they start drama internally because
Mm-hmm.
they just don't resolve conflict, and you gotta be willing to do that. Obviously, there has been conflict within our own team as well, but it's my job and psychologist's job and the support staff's job in in its entirety to look at the macro scale of things and be able to resolve those issues quickly without any real damage.
Exactly.
So so yeah, it's important to kind of just be aware of your player's mental state. You don't want to go into a match feeling underprepared. You don't want to go into a match feeling that you've already lost. You have to
Mm-hmm.
be confident. Um, I know like people will look at pro league teams, right, and they'll look at there's been like scrim vods and stuff that have been posted out recently of just like the last season,
Mm-hmm.
just a bit of good content to put out, and like you can see that comms and stuff like Dog Zero do a lot of that, which is quite cool.
Yep.
Uh, but you'll see like a lot of trash talk in those
Mm-hmm.
where they're like, "Oh, these guys suck" or whatever. But I'm telling
Mm-hmm.
you, you have to do stuff like that because it really does help with the mentality if you 100% believe that you are better than the other team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that right there is a great point. And that trash talking is perfectly fine. Until it turns into like
100%.
rampant toxicity, right? You don't want to be
Yeah,
like
yeah,
demoralizing, demeaning either your team or the playing. But
definitely.
like trash talk, like it's a competition. You want to win. You want to prove that you're
Exactly.
better. So like
Exactly.
that good banter, that trash talk goes a long way, and that's that boosts
Yeah.
your self confidence. That gives a good self image, all that kind of stuff, self esteem. That's good for you, and you develop that positive mentality. And like you said, confidence is key. That positive confidence going to the next match. I remember I used to play football in high school, and when we had that mindset my senior year, like, hey, we're just better. Yeah, we trash talked, but
Definitely.
we weren't trying to like destroy them. Like we were just better. But yeah, so that's I think something that I hope esports continues to embrace. I think, like you said, it's definitely happening at that pro level. I think it's going to continue to trickle down everywhere.
Hmm.
Trying to like get rid of some of that bad toxicity that we see in some other places, especially
Definitely.
online. Which that's just the way that online, when you have behind a computer screen, it's a little easier to get a little out of hand for sure. Unfortunately, we are kind of getting near the end time of this podcast. I've had a blast. I'll leave you with one last question, Sternab. Advice. So, imagine you're talking to a high school student, right? 16, 17, they're playing a lot of online ranked in whatever game. It doesn't have to be Siege necessarily, but they want to get that next level, looking maybe playing collegiately if they're in the States, where there's a big scene for that, or just going to find a tier 2 team or tier 1 team if they're good enough. What advice would you give them so that they stay on that trend of positive growth and they're not hurting themselves too much, but they're actually, having that mindset of, hey, I want to play competitive. So, like, what advice there to help them in their situation?
I think just in general, just relax. At the end of the day, it is a video game. If you lose, it is not the end of the world. It is
Mm-hmm.
not just some career-defining moment. Like we lost to make it to pro league, and we kept it together. We've kept the team together, and we are continuing to grind. If we can do that, then you can realize that your collegiate game probably isn't the most important thing in the world. But
Hmm.
if you love it, you'll make it work.
Yeah, exactly. That right there. Love what you do, and you'll see success in the long run. Love it, stick with it, keep developing that passion, and the work ethic and the effort and the time will follow closely. So there's all the time. Sternab, real quick, plug yourself. Tell us where we can find you, your
Hmm.
team, and so we can watch you guys grow to hopefully Pro League with the upcoming CL quals.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at SternabR6. That's really where I do most of my trash talking there as well. I just kind of post whatever on Twitter. That's kind of
Hmm.
where I spend most of my time. I also have an Instagram on Sternab6, and also I Twitch and I stream sometimes as well, just on my own, just at Sternab as well. And you can follow our team at Diffuse Kids, and you can find all of those guys there. And yeah, like that's really it. And well, you'll hopefully see us in the next CL season. You'll be able to see what we're doing there, and
Yeah.
hopefully we should be able to put on a good show for you guys.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I know there's a mix-up coming to that pro level of Siege soon, so it'll be exciting to see where things pan out. So everyone out there, to
Hmm.
our listeners and viewers, wherever you are, stay healthy in these very difficult and unprecedented times. Stay healthy, stay happy, and stay plugged in.